The state pattern allows an object to behave differently depending on the state that it is currently in. So say that you are writing a blog post using the popular content management system WordPress, and the document or post can be in one of three states. So it can be in draft, moderation, or under review by an admin, or it can be published. And there are also three types of user roles within WordPress. There are readers that can only read posts. There are editors that can read or edit posts. And there are admins that can read, edit, or create new posts or delete posts. And only admins can publish documents. Okay, so if a post is under moderation, then only an admin can publish that document. Or that post, I should say. So first of all, we're going to create a simple solution that uses if-else conditional statements to check the current state of the document to see whether the state of the document should be upgraded. So first of all, we're going to create an enum called document states, which is going to store all of the possible states for our document or our post. And we're going to have a draft state, a moderation state, and a published state. And we're also going to create an enum to store our possible user roles. And we have readers, editors, and admins. Okay. So now I'm going to create the document class, or the post class, and in here we are going to store the current document state. Okay, so this is going to be of type document states, which means that it's going to be one of these values, either draft, moderation, or published. And this is going to be a property, so we're going to give it a getter and a setter. And we're going to do the same for the user role. Okay, so the current user role. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to create our publish method. So let's create that. And this publish method is essentially responsible for updating or upgrading the state of the document to the next state. So what we're going to do is we're going to write some conditional statements here. So we're going to check if the state is in a draft state, then we are going to upgrade the state to document states dot moderation. Okay, so we're going to upgrade from draft to moderation, the next or sort of step up, where the admin can review the state of the document. Else if the state is equal to the document states.moderation. So if we are currently in moderation state, then we need to check the user roles, because only admins can publish a document from moderation to published. So here we can say if keyboard's locked. What are you doing? Okay. So here we can say if current user role is equal to user roles dot admin, we can set the state of the document to published. Okay. Otherwise, we do nothing. So if the current user is not an admin, then they cannot upgrade the state of the document from this moderation state. So we do nothing. And then what we can say is else if state equals document states dot published, then we can basically do nothing because there's no higher state than published. So technically we could get rid of this, but we'll just leave it here so that it's clear that we are doing nothing if the document state is already published. And one other thing that we could also add up here is that if the document state is in a draft state, then we could also check to see if the current user role is an admin, and then just skip this moderation state and go straight to published. That's something that we could do. Otherwise, if the user is not an admin, then we go to this state. So that's something that we could do, but just for simplicity, we'll keep it as this. Okay, so let's actually try to use this solution. So if we go into program.cs and we create a new document, and we will need to import this from, let's see, should be from here. And let's set the document state to moderation. And then let's set the current user role to admin. And we will just log the document state. Okay, so let's run this to see what we have. And we can see that the document state is currently in moderation, which is correct. But now, if we try to publish the document, and we log the document state, let's see what we get. So the current user role is an admin, and the current document state is in moderation. So the admin has moderated or checked that the document is okay. They've then clicked the publish button, and now the document should be in a published state. So let's check if it is in a published state. Correct, so the document has gone from moderation to published. But if we change the user role to something less than admin, such as an editor, editors can't publish documents. They need to be checked by an admin before being published. So now we should see that the state is remains in moderation. And that is correct. We get 2 logs of moderation. So that is all working correctly. Now, can you spot the problems with the current document class? Okay, so if you take a look at the document class, can you spot any issues? Is it violating any of the solid principles, for example? So if you check out this publish method, we can see there's lots of if-else conditional statements, right? So what we're actually doing here is we are violating the open-closed principle, because if we add any other states or user roles, many of the document classes methods, such as this publish method, currently we only have one method, but a real document would have multiple methods, and we're going to have to modify all of these methods. So if we add another user role, we're going to have even more if-else statements, right? And this class is going to become extremely bloated with all of these if-else conditional statements in every single one of its methods, pretty much. And yeah, with more states, this class is going to become bloated, unwieldy, and difficult to understand. And the code is very difficult to maintain because any changes in logic may require changing state conditionals in every one of this document class's methods. So let's see how we can improve on our solution and solve some of the issues that we encountered by using the state pattern. So the state pattern suggests that we should create state classes for each possible state of the document object. Now, if you remember, we have 3 possible states, and those were draft, moderation, and published. So that means we should create 3 new classes for each of those possible states and extract all state-specific logic out of this document class and into these individual state objects. The document class will then store a reference to one of these state classes to represent the current state that the document is in. Then, instead of the document implementing state-specific behavior by itself, it delegates all state-related work to the state object that it has reference to. So here is the UML diagram that we are going to implement in code. So we have our document class, which stores reference to a state object, and it can be any one of these concrete state objects, provided that these concrete objects implement the state interface. Okay, so this is going to be an object of type state, which can be any one of these concrete state objects. And we're also going to store reference to the current user role. So then we just have a publish method which delegates all state-related work to one of these concrete state objects. So we can see here above that document keeps reference to, or is composed of, represented by this diamond arrow, a state object. And notice that we are using polymorphism, as the state field in the document class can be any one of the concrete state classes, so draft, moderation, or published, as we are coding to an interface, not concrete classes. So we are coding to this state interface, not these individual concrete classes. And that improves flexibility. In documents, the publish method calls state.publish, and it delegates the work to the concrete state object. So why is this a good thing? Because our solution now satisfies the open-close principle. Because if we want to add a new state, so a new concrete state, we create a new concrete state class that implements the state interface. We essentially extend our code base, in other words, add new classes to our code base without having to modify any of the current existing classes, such as the document class. And beforehand, if you remember, if we added a new state, we had to modify existing code, the methods in the document class. Whereas now we just have to extend our code base by adding a new class that implements the state interface. So here's how the state pattern is represented in the Gang of Four book with its abstract class names. So we can see here that our document class is the context object, which is composed of a state object, and then we have a load of concrete states. So let's actually now implement this solution with the state pattern in code. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to create the document class. And I'm also going to create the state interface. And the state interface just has a single publish method. And if this was a real document, it would have more state-dependent methods such as render, but we're just going to keep it simple for this example with the one publish method. So I think now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the document class, actually create it properly. So let's give it a field or property for storing the current state of the document, and we're also going to have store the user roles as well. So current user role. Okay, and then in the constructor, we're going to pass the current user role. And this should be of type user roles, and we're going to set the state equal to new draft state, and we have not actually made this class yet, so we'll create this shortly. And in here we're going to pass this document object. Okay, so by default, what we're saying here is that when we create a new document, the sort of default initial state of the document is just going to be the draft state. Okay, so then what we can do is we can also set the current user role. Okay, so now we're going to add our publish method. And in here we are just going to simply call state.publish. Okay, so we're delegating all state specific work to these concrete state objects, which we are going to create now. So let's create the draft state first of all. And all states should implement the state interface. Okay, so they all should have a publish method. And all states also need to store reference to the document object. So let's store a reference to that. And then we need a constructor. And we can set the document in the constructor. So what we do here is, so if we're in draft state and the user clicks publish, okay, so what we should do here is we should change the state of the document to the moderation state. We should upgrade from draft to moderation, okay, so that the admin can review the documents. So what we can do here is we can return a new moderation state, and we pass the documents. Okay, and we need to pass the documents because each of these states need to have the ability to change the state field within the document. Okay, so now we get a red squiggly line here because we need to create this moderation state object. So we create a new C# class called moderation state, and in here again we need to store reference to the document, and we also again need to have a constructor where we set the document, and then remember this needs to implement the state interface, and if we implement that interface we will need to implement a publish method. Within the publish method we can add our logic. So if we're currently in moderation state, so if we have a look at the old solution, we can see that if state equals moderation, we need to check the current user role, and if the current user role is an admin, then we can upgrade the state to published. Otherwise we don't do anything. So that is the logic for when publish is clicked when we are currently in moderation state. So what we can do here is we can say if document dot current user role is equal to user roles dot admin, then we can upgrade the document state to published. Published state, and we pass the document. Okay, so let's now create this published state. And in here we need to implement the state interface, and we also need the same as before. We need a reference to document, and we also need to initialize the document in the constructor. So let's do that. We can just copy and paste that in and change the name of the constructor. Okay, so what happens when a user clicks publish if we are already in the published state? Well, we should just do nothing, so we can just return, or we can just leave this blank. Okay, so we just do nothing basically. So I'll just write a comment. if already in published state. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. So let's actually now have a look how we can use this state pattern solution. But before we do that, what I'm just going to do is I'm going to change, I'm just going to copy and paste this enum into our good solutions folder. So let's add this in here. So this is a user roles enum. And we can paste those in, and that should hopefully enable us to use this state pattern solution. So let's see, so new document, and we need to import this, so should be that one, and we're going to use user roles dot editor, and we're just going to log the document state, so doc.state, and then we'll publish the document and console log, and then we'll publish again and log the doc.state. So let's run this, and we can see that initially we have a draft state, so that is correct. Whenever we create a new document, it is in draft state, and then the user role for this document is an editor. So when we publish a document that is in draft state, it should then go to moderation state, and that is correct. And if we publish again, we should stay in moderation state because the user is not an admin. So that is all working correctly. And let's now change the user role from editor to admin. So now we should go, initially we should have the draft state, then we should have moderation state, and then we should have the publish state, because admins can publish documents. So let's see if that works. And there we go, that is all working correctly. And it's also possible to actually change the state directly. So if we wanted to go back to draft state, we can just simply add in the draft state like so. And if we log the state of the document, we can see here that we go back into draft state. So now if we create any new states, we don't have to modify the document class, as its publish method is coded to an interface and so delegates the work to a concrete class. And as you can see here, the state class is coded to an interface, not a concrete state class, which means that the document class can use polymorphism to delegate the work to any of the concrete state classes. And this gives our program good flexibility. So let's now have a look at the pros and cons of the state pattern. So the state pattern can actually be overkill or over-engineering. For example, consider a simple stopwatch that has two states. So it has a running state, is running, or it has a is running state equals false. So it's either running or it isn't running, it's stopped. And if this is a very, very simple class, and we can be pretty certain that the stopwatch isn't going to get more complex. We're not going to have any more states than either stopped or started, and so using the state pattern and creating more classes here adds unnecessary complexity. So this class, even though it has a few conditional statements in its click method, it's pretty straightforward, and there's not really any need to go ahead and create separate state classes just for this stopwatch. It's pretty straightforward as it is, and we're not going to add any more states in the long run. So when to use the state pattern? So a good indication that you should use the state pattern is if you have a class that behaves differently depending on its state, and you have a large number of conditionals. or if-else statements in the methods. So like we did before in this document class, it started to get pretty bloated. We were having lots of if-else statements to check the current state and then do some particular behavior. And this is a good indication that we should abstract this this sort of state-dependent behavior into their own classes. So the state pattern can be used with abstract classes to reduce duplication. So in our case, we used an interface. We used the state interface, but you could also have used an abstract class where we kind of keep maybe some fields or a few methods that are sort of shared between the concrete state objects. So it's also possible to use abstract classes to reduce code duplication. And you can also create a hierarchy of state classes and abstract common code into these abstract base classes. So the pros and cons of the state pattern. So some of the pros are that the state pattern improves readability and simplicity of the context class by eliminating conditionals. It satisfies the single responsibility principle by abstracting state-specific logic into separate classes, and it satisfies the open-closed principle because we can introduce new states without modifying existing classes. So our code is open for extension but closed for modification. And one of the cons of this pattern, as we have just discussed with the stopwatch example, is that this pattern can be overkill if there are only a few states or if state logic rarely changes, for example, this class here.